Hi, I'm Chris, and I'm here to talk about paraglider ratings in general, and specifically the P3 rating. First, we'll start off with the P1, and the P1 is an interesting rating. That's basically your very first rating that just indicates that you've had some paraglider training. It's a nice sense of accomplishment. It's a nice thing to frame and put in your wallet. And also, if you want to become a passenger for a T1 pilot, then you can get your P1 rating, and then you can go ahead and fly with that tandem pilot in training or that tandem pilot that's not commercial. So moving on to the P2, that's a very interesting rating. That means you're going to be able to go out and fly on your own, but it's worth pointing out that it's nothing but a license to learn. So that means that most P2s aren't going to be completely dialed in, ready to fly every single place. More appropriately, these are people who are smart enough and who have proven that they're smart enough to go and get another instructor or to go and get another guide pilot wherever they may go. For sure, the basic skills are there, but the flying world is so big and varied and diverse that a P2 pilot does not have everything that they need. So by the time that you have your 30 days, 90 flights, 20 hours, then you're eligible for the P3 rating, but it's important to sort of figure out why it is that you're motivated by the P3 rating. In many cases, that means that you'll be able to fly certain sites or to be able to fly certain sites without a sponsoring pilot. And I understand that, and we respect that need for the P3 rating. We like to see a high level of proficiency, that people have flown a variety of places and stayed out of trouble, familiar with a variety of different types of equipment. But I will mention that when a pilot receives a P3 rating, it's not good to adjust or change the behavior or expand the operating limitations just because that rating has been achieved. I think that's a major pitfall for a new P3 pilot. I think statistically speaking, if we look at where the accidents happen, we find that it's people who just received a P3. And so know that that signifies that you've met some minimum requirements, and for sure you satisfied a USHPA instructor that you are indeed intermediate. But there again, all you're empowered to do is to continue to find more instructors and to incrementally work step-by-step progression to take your flying to the next level, which speaks to the next point, which is that whenever a flying decision is done in accordance with a thoughtful progression, then it's a win. And whenever a decision is made and it results in some flying that's not in line with the progression, then that's a fail. Example, a recent P2 signed off just a few days ago, went exploring off a local mountain, easy hike up, mellow, simple landing with a friend, very successful flight, very much in keeping with his progression. Not really of note, very sort of simple flight. Fast forward a couple days, this pilot's now taken a flight deep in the mountains, launching at 10,000 feet and managed to get 1,000 feet above launch. This with somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 simple flights. And so this decision making is completely misguided. It's not in keeping with the progression at all. And while on some simple level we're very happy for this pilot that he had such an amazing experience, we're also very disappointed in the decision-making process. We feel like the pilot needs a correction, and we hope that the story is much different from that on an ongoing basis. This is a specific story, but it's representative of how the flow tends to go for many pilots receiving a new rating. They feel like it's their ticket to go and incur more risk, and so I think that's where we go astray. And more aptly, when people receive a new rating, our very favorite advice is for them to just pretend that it didn't happen, to go back out and even reduce the operating limitations. Reducing operating limitations, taking a step back, doing slightly more simple flights is a classic cornerstone of a thoughtful pilot who's on a long-term progression, who recognizes that the goal is 20 plus years out, and that in keeping with that, if the first 5 years need to be spent as a beginner, then the next 5 can be spent as intermediate, and so on. Remember that the timeline is long, and that the only thing that has the chance to interrupt that is a rushed progression on any level. One of the biggest ways for people to rush that progression is to feel empowered by a new rating. Moving on to the P4 rating, that's an interesting one because that is your rating that allows you to engage in tandem flying after taking a clinic and satisfying a tandem administrator. And so that one ends up being very interesting for people. It also is your ticket to be able to fly certain sites that are sensitive or crowded. And so that one is not nearly as problematic as the P3. Again, it's a fun thing to celebrate, meeting the requirement. And kudos to anyone who's worked the system and ended up with their P3 or their P4. That's awesome and congratulations, but take that rating and make your instructor proud that they gave it to you. Okay, the P5 rating is an interesting rating. When you've been flying a number of years and you have accumulated enough points, hours and log flights, then you can petition for the P5 rating, and that's quite an interesting one because it means that you've flown for 200 hours, 500 log flights, and a number of gliders. You get points for competition, altitude gains, airtime. You get some for tandem, for towing, and when you reach a grand total of 1,450 points in 6 different categories, then you can have a P5. And I think if you ever get to that point, that is definitely something to celebrate.